Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Majority Podcast. This is episode number 30. Difficult to believe we've gone so many already. I'm your host, Mark Devlin, and this is Scotland's number one anti-nationalist podcast, coming to you live every Wednesday at 7 p.m. And I'm here tonight with my co-host, David Griffiths. How are you today, David?
I'm all good, thank you very much. And in case people are wondering, tonight our colleague Niall is speaking at the Glasgow Cabbies protest against indoctrination and sex surveys in Scottish schools. So we've given him a pass tonight. It's a very worthy cause indeed.
We'll give that a wee mention in a second as well. What are we going to be talking about tonight?
Well, tonight we're going to be talking about an extended look at Ms. Sturgeon's desperate power grabs, which of course include will a referendum happen next year? What's going on legally? And is a proxy referendum even possible?
And of course we will have Zoomer of the Week. So we will be back in just a moment. Right, okay, so before we start tonight's show, we have an announcement that we were going to be away for the next 2 Wednesdays. No show, sad to say, for next 2 weeks because we are on holiday. Okay, us. We'll be back on Wednesday, July the 20th, and then from then, hopefully, unbroken right through to Christmas and beyond. As David said earlier, Niall is not here tonight. And normally we might have Mary on as a replacement, but she's not been well all week, although she's behind the scenes selecting your comments, which, of course, you should be putting in right now. And best comments will be selected, David.
Absolutely right. Hang on one sec. Oh, goodness. So, yeah. So, where are we? Yeah, so tonight's a big night because it's okay. Thanks to you guys, everyone. Our crowdfund to undermine and fight the PetendyRef is going so well, we have now raised £4,650. So while most of that will go to billboards and social media campaigns, we need to raise more to mount a proper people's legal challenge to stop this absolute nonsense from going ahead. So if you would like to, go on, Mark.
Yeah, no, it's been great, very successful so far. We've had a lot of amazing response and from everyone. Basically, we know that there's a lot of people have been asking us on Twitter and Facebook. Everywhere says, can we donate to something to try and stop Nicola Sturgeon's power grab? And it's been really amazing so far. So while so far money raised, a lot of it will go to billboards, but we need about £4,000 for legal challenge to get a QC's opinion, and then that will let us know all the steps that we can take, all the legal avenues in which we can fight. Now, if you want to donate, the easiest way to do so is to go to our website, themajority.scot. There's a thing up the top. It says destroy Nicola Sturgeon's PetendyRef, and just put whatever it is you can afford in there, a one-time or monthly donation. It's everything helps.
Absolutely. So, and in addition, guys, as we always do before the show, we'd like to thank our friends at UK Union Voice and at United Against Separation for supporting the podcast and for letting us broadcast directly to their Facebook pages from where I know many of you are watching. So many, many thanks again to those good people.
Of course, you can also watch on YouTube where you can subscribe and get alerts and never miss the podcast. Subscribe now. Go to YouTube right now, find the Majority Scot and subscribe. The more subscribers we get, the more we go up in the search rankings, and everything helps. So please do that.
Exactly. And as Niall always says, this is Niall's plea every week. Like, share, comment, tell your friends, extend the reach of the Majority. You just have to click a button. It all helps, guys. It really does. So there will be, we're looking forward to hearing the comments, reading the comments tonight. And as always, keep them short, don't make them too long, because Mary is going to manfully edit them all, and she will be interjecting at various stages with good comments which she feels, merit a little bit more discussion. So we can't show them all on screen, but we'll do as many as we can. So please get them coming. Thanks very much, guys.
So coming up, as David says, please send in your questions about Nicola Sturgeon's PetendyRef. Send the comments in, and we'll be back in a second to start it all off. Right. Right, David, you're going to start today.
Indeed. So, everyone, this week, the First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, finally confirmed the worst kept secret in Scottish politics. No, not that one. No, we're not going there. This, instead, was the revelation that the much-promised 2023 independence referendum will not take place. Now, the First Minister is obviously very much aware of this fact, because despite knowing and more or less conceding yesterday in her speech that Plan A, an official referendum sanctioned by the UK government, will not happen, she chose to avoid Plan B, which we all know is an unofficial referendum, and instead she careered straight into Plan C. It was a quite extraordinary outburst yesterday, and her further utterances today have been much the same. Really, really bizarre. Plan C, as we all know, is that Nicola Sturgeon revealed yesterday that the next UK general election will be treated by the SNP as a de facto independence referendum. Now, to summarise what this means, guys, the SNP realise now that they cannot hold a legal referendum without first obtaining a Section 30 order from the UK government. This is the Act of Parliament that allows Scottish Government to temporarily take on the powers to have a referendum. The UK government quite simply will not agree to this, and rightly so, because, as they point out, there's already been an independence referendum in which the outcome was very clear, and that was in 2014, only 8 years ago. Now, there was some suspicion in the lead up to Nicola Sturgeon's much vaunted speech yesterday that the SNP might try to persuade or try to cajole the Supreme Court that they wish to hold just an advisory or a consultative referendum in order to get around the need for a Section 30 Act. But it appears they've decided not to go down that path because, as the First Minister has said, firstly in her speech yesterday and latterly in several interviews, every UK referendum is consultative, so she's effectively blocked off her own avenue there. So that's where we are. There will not be a referendum next year unless the Supreme Court have what is colloquially termed a brain fart and decide to allow it, but they won't. They absolutely won't. So, Mark, what's your view?
Well, I think the thing, I've been talking with people about this, and one of the things that's quite clear, I think, is becoming more and more clear, is that, Sturgeon's very clever in presenting her plan as being against Westminster, right? Yeah. But in fact, even there in the thing she said, if the courts reject her plan, it will be Westminster's fault. I don't know how that's possible. Supreme Court is a different thing. But I think this actually leads to something quite important, that she's actually fighting against the Scottish people. The Scottish people decided the limits of the Constitution. They did so in the devolution argument devolution referendum in 1997, and they did so again. They reaffirmed that in the independence referendum of 2014. This means that constitutionally, Nicola Sturgeon is limited. Right? She has limits on what her power is, and the Scotland Act is very clear. Says you can't make laws on reserved issues, and the Constitution is reserved. And unsurprisingly, it's reserved because, otherwise the country would be in total chaos by any separatists. Yeah. So what we're actually seeing here is Sturgeon is exceeding the powers the Scottish people have actually granted her. This is the key difference, right? So it's not like she's against Westminster. Westminster is stopping this thing. It's actually the Scottish people who are stopping thing. And so what she's trying to do is grab powers that she doesn't have. And this is the thing. She doesn't have a power to do a referendum at all, unless, of course, the UK government gives in, which they won't do. Why would they give in after a free and fair referendum? I mean, you think they would ever give in, David?
Not a chance. Absolutely not. These guys will keep saying no in perpetuity. They genuinely will. I mean, I watch the exchanges in the House of Commons, and I'm struck by the steadfastness with which particularly the Conservative government, sticks to their guns, and they just say no, absolutely not. Penny Mordaunt is excellent at this, but most of the front bench are very, very good at this also. They're never going to give in to this, because why should they? If they did, it would make a mockery of the United Kingdom as an entity, because you cannot simply have reserved issues passed to regional or local level administrators. You can't do that. Otherwise, as you say, there would be utter chaos. There would be no country. There would be just...
Well, this is the thing I think we have to all understand. It's
Yeah.
a devolved administration. It's not a separate country already. If it was a separate country, we'd have this type of thing. But we chose, the majority of Scots chose in a free and fair referendum by an overwhelming majority that we would remain part of the UK and follow the UK's rules. And the UK's rules are a devolved administration cannot act on a reserved area. So by trying to always agitating to go beyond that, she's exceeding her powers. And we've seen this type of behaviour time and time again throughout history. Nationalist leaders always think they're more entitled to more power than they actually have. They always have more power and justify their greed for power, as Sturgeon does, as being for the good of the nation. But the UK is a nation of laws. And that's something, and she can go on as much as she likes about democracy and what she thinks democracy is, but democracy is a bunch of laws that people have made, and some of those laws affect the constitution and what she can do. And this is the thing I think that angers me, because it basically says that she should, these rules, constitutions, are allow limits on power, right? Or put limits on the power of politicians. And
yes.
Exceeding that every day against the wishes of the people who made that constitution, the Scottish people. It's really trampling on the UK constitution and actually the Scottish constitution, which is the Scotland Act and so on.
I couldn't agree more. Exactly. I mean, you've got a situation where you have this increasingly bizarre devolved administration, the SNP government, who tell us more and more that they're speaking on the behalf of, you've heard it many times, the people of Scotland, as they keep saying it. Now, latterly, they're turning it into a discussion about democracy. If you're a Democrat, you must agree with us. No, absolutely not. We're all Democrats. And on that very basis, there was a democratic decision taken in 2014 for Scotland to remain in the UK. 2 years later, there was a further democratic decision for the UK to remain to leave the European Union. And the SNP has rejected out of hand the result of both referendums. They have refused to accept the validity of both results, and they're fighting against both to this minute.
Yes,
literally.
this is the comments coming in. She didn't. She ignored the Edinburgh Agreement. Edinburgh Agreement said that it would be a decisive result. It would be, and that all parties would abide by. And you shouldn't do that. So why should we? If she doesn't accept the result of the real referendum, why should we accept any result of any kind of her machinations to make a PetendyRef or anything that she's trying to do? It's like she's not listening to the majority of Scots, and she's not listening to the settled will, as it were, through the referendum. Why should we listen to her? And I think this is an important point as we're coming up. We've had some great comments coming in so far. Someone asked, will she ever give up on this? What do you think, David?
I can't see it. The only way she will give up is she may give up her own role. She may say, I'm sorry, I tried. I promised you a referendum. The Supreme Court are not guilty here, but that was the point of what she said yesterday. It's Westminster legislation that's at fault here. Yeah, whatever. So she won't give up on chasing the prize. She may voluntarily stand down in time and accept the fact that she's been unable to deliver on the promise she made. I think that's more likely. But will the SNP ever give up? Not a chance. And that's why I always say we've got to find some way of getting them out of office, whatever that takes, whether it takes,
yes. I think that's a slightly separate discussion to this one. I mean, there are multiple strategies on that. And I think what we have to do in this particular discussion is focus in on these constitutional issues. Now, I think that this is a kind of last gasp from a desperate administration that knows it can't legally get what it wants, so it's trying to browbeat us into something. And by doing so, though, it's exposing her constitutional excesses, right? She is not entitled to do this. She knows the law, right?
Absolutely.
She's got a Lord Advocate there who has said to her, look, the Scotland Act says this, and you can try all these different ways around it, but it doesn't work. It's like a toddler. We say that a toddler, asking for sweeties, and you say, no, that's not going to happen. And they throw a tantrum and whatever it is, and some parents might give in, but if you hold firm, then what can the toddler do? It can't do anything. I'm not saying that the Scottish government is a toddler in that sense. I'm saying Sturgeon is behaving but in that similar manner, and it's a dead end. So
yes,
is she just leading the hardcore up the garden path?
I think she absolutely is. I think this is what she's doing. We've said this on the show before. There isn't an independence movement as such. There's an independence industry in Holyrood, because you've got people who are pro-independence and people who are anti-independence, and they just throw the same insults and sound bites at each other week upon week, week after week, year after year, term after term, and on it goes. And it appears both sides are perfectly happy with this scenario. So
I don't know if both sides are perfectly happy with it.
Well, I don't know. I mean, we see that, but we have heard both Labour and Conservative saying, "Oh yes, we want to be a strong opposition." So yeah, really, if that's the case, then it sounds like you're pretty happy with the status quo, guys. Anyway, that's
the jobs. To some extent, the Scottish any MSP's jobs do depend on that.
Sure.
Coming up in a second, we will go on to ask some more questions about this. Please do keep putting in your questions, and if you would like to donate to our fund, please do so. Go to our website and click the button at the top there. Every donation, big or small, one time or monthly, is most appreciated. Back in a second. Okay. So what about the timescale then?
Right. So will a referendum happen in 2023? Because you've seen and heard, all of us, over the last couple of days, and read newspaper articles that, oh yes, at the date set, there's going to be a referendum in 2023. Is there? I don't think so. The First Minister yesterday, being the slippery, deceitful politician that we all know her to be, didn't actually say there wouldn't be a referendum, because to do that would be an admission that she had in fact misled the Scottish public. Instead, she announced her intention to ask the Supreme Court straight off to rule on whether it is legal for the Scottish Government to hold a referendum without the consent of the UK Government. Now, the answer to this question, as everyone knows, is not a chance. So, in my opinion, the chances of a referendum taking place in 2023 are effectively zero. And the reason I say that with such conviction is, were that not to be the case, which is effectively plan A, she's ruled out plan B and jumped straight to plan C. Therefore, she can't be talking about all these alternatives if she had the slightest confidence that there was actually going to be her plan A coming to fruition. So, as far as I'm concerned, no chance of a referendum in 2023. What do you think, Mark?
Even talking about the planning, I mean, how long does it take to plan the thing? I mean,
Sure.
There's been some commentary that basically that she's just trying to force this thing through. It's not actually about the referendum. It's about the general election in it could be in 2024. I guess there's a time limit. No, there isn't a time limit.
Well, it's got to be in 2024. Yes, there has to be.
Right, okay, so there's going to be a general election 2024. So what she's doing is basically getting her side ready to make some kind of, to keep them going by saying, okay, first of all, we're all fired up because there's going to be a referendum. Oh no, those bad people in Westminster, they stopped it, and so you should vote for us in the general election because that's going to be a referendum, a proxy referendum, and it's going to keep that thing going because they're scared, as some commentators have said. Kenny Farquharson, Blair, and McDougall, I think, have said that basically they're scared of a Labour government. So what we'll get this quite interesting situation of basically Sturgeon ginning up her followers to vote for her instead of Labour in the next election and actually helping the Tories stay in power.
Well, I mean, there is quite a lot of suggestion that maybe conjecture that maybe the Conservatives and the SNP are quite happy with the current situation, because in Holyrood, the SNP is keeping Labour out of power, and in Westminster, the Conservatives are keeping Labour out of power, and it quite suits both parties, albeit they appear to be at least diametrically opposed. Could it be? It's possible. Certainly, it would appear that Sturgeon fears Labour a lot more than she fears the Conservatives, and probably with good reason, because, as we know, the last time the Conservative Party won an election in Scotland was in 1955. So, yeah, albeit in those days you had the Conservative Party and the Unionist Party, so it was slightly skewed. But by the 60s, Labour was beating the combined total of the Conservative and Unionists. So there's no question that the SNP doesn't see the Conservative Party in Scotland as anything like as big a rival as they do Labour, because let's be honest, most of these people who are voting SNP were voting Labour until 2010, at least until 2007.
And of course, they don't want them to go back to Labour. As long as there is a hope, a glimmer of hope, the golden carrot that she is holding up, as long as there is a tiny hope that there's a referendum, they will stay with her. But as soon as that hope is gone, and we say, like, as soon as she reaches a hard stop, and we'll come to this a little bit later in the legal section we're going to talk about, as soon as there's a hard stop, then they kind of wake up and say, we're not going to get a referendum. So who's the best anti-Tory? What's the best way to vote against the Tories and get them out of power? And the best way to do that, of course, is going to be to vote for Labour to change the UK government. But so she's deliberately keeping this going as long as possible, so that she can stay in power. But the end result of that is that it perhaps may well keep the Tories in power. And I wonder how much Labour are going to make hay with that, if possible. I mean, obviously the Tories are going to try and say that there's going to try and be a Labour SNP coalition. I don't know how far that's going to go. I think there's no coalition policy we've discussed before on the show, but it's quite an interesting dilemma. I mean, will they go straight out and say, voting for Nicola Sturgeon is a vote for the Tories, basically?
Well, in England, that will be presented as such. It was very successfully in 2015. Miliband, I think it was Miliband was the Labour leader then, and it was seen as, you vote Labour, you get the SNP. So unexpectedly, the Conservative Party won a majority that year because that message resonated so strongly in Middle England, if you like. So, yeah, that's something certainly that the usually Conservative voting public in England does fear, which is a Labour Party propped up by the SNP and doing the SNP's bidding. So, yeah, so it's interesting.
Well, interesting to see who wins that kind of marketing dilemma, I suppose. But I have I don't know, maybe a misplaced faith a little bit in the electorate, that they do seem to generally have an idea of what's going on, and ultimately, and I suppose that's why one of the reasons democracy exists, so that you can get all those things together. I mean, we were talking a bit about a mandate. There's no we don't think there's a mandate. How can she have a mandate? She's going on about this mandate. How can she go on about this? Because it's a reserved issue, right?
Exactly. So, well, my view on this, and I've posted this many times. Is there a mandate? You hear this. There's a cast iron mandate. Robertson's been saying this. Hosie, all of the usual suspects have come out and trotted out this line. There's a cast iron mandate, which is only a very recent thing that they've actually said this. They never talked about this until about 4 weeks ago. But now suddenly they're talking about the last year's election as giving them a cast iron mandate to do what was in their manifesto. Now, I refute that utterly, because you cannot have devolved administrations acting unilaterally on reserved issues, irrespective of whatever they put in their regional election manifesto. And just that's a point I've made. I may have made this in this podcast, but I don't remember. But in 2019, in the general election, the SNP stood on a manifesto pledge, and the manifesto still exists, you can still see it. They said, we will scrap Trident, we will stop Brexit, and we will keep Boris Johnson out of number 10 Downing Street. Okay, they stood on that premise, and they won 48 out of 59 seats, which I think was an increase of 13 seats. So obviously the manifesto resonated with the public a bit. So does that give them a mandate to carry out those 3 tasks? If so, when are the Pickford's vans going to arrive at number 10 to move Boris Johnson's stuff out? Because the SNP put it in their manifesto, so they've got a mandate to do it. They've got a mandate to stop Boris Johnson coming out of Downing Street. When will cruise missiles be removed from Fastlane? Because they put that in their manifesto.
Well, it's like I've got a mandate to have a date with Angelina Jolie. I mean, it's
absolutely.
like, it doesn't mean anything.
It means absolutely
I think, I mean, even that's, maybe some people might say, oh, that's an opinion. But when you actually look at the numbers, we're talking about a minority SNP government, right?
Yeah.
And they've got two Greens, right, propping up making their so-called majority. But those Greens were voted in on the list, which means
That's
that
right.
the same people could have voted for SNP and Green candidates, right? So
absolutely.
there's not a what we might say a constituency majority,
no.
right? Even they don't have that.
No, they don't.
It's, they don't even have the basics in order. They don't have much popular will. I've got some poll information here. Savanta Comres final poll ahead of 2021 Scottish election. Just 19% of Scots said independence was in the top 3 issues. 19%.
Wow.
And even SNP supporters were more likely to choose health, the economy, Brexit, and employment as the top issues compared with independence. And then Savanta Comrades also said that the tracker that's been running since December 2020 has never shown an appetite for a Scottish independence referendum in the next 2 years or sooner, above 40%. And I think a lot of those people, we talk about these, the manana referendum folk or something. It's like, oh, I want a referendum in 3 years. And then 3 years later, you ask them again, oh, I want a referendum in 3 years.
Yeah.
It's like just goes on and on because they actually don't want a referendum, but they don't really want to see it.
Yeah.
And go ahead, David.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're right. I think they do. I think they like, if you like, calling the UK government's bluff by saying, come on, you're going to give us a referendum? No, we're not. Look at them. They're so anti-democratic. They would fill their pants, so to speak, the SNP, if they were actually granted the referendum, because they wouldn't win it. And I think they know that. I think they actually do know that. And this is why a lot of people think there is this independence industry going on, where you've got one side saying yes and the other side saying no, and on and on and on it goes, and it just keeps both of them in power. So it's not real. It's not genuine. It's not bona fide. There isn't any genuine understanding or belief that there will be a referendum next year. And so every time you hear the SNP talking about this in coming days and weeks, you know that they're just talking a lot of hooey. It's not true. They don't even believe it themselves. If they did believe it themselves, they wouldn't be talking about Plan C, which is what's going to happen in the event that blah, blah, blah.
Well, I mean, it comes to basics. If you had a mandate, you wouldn't need to ask permission.
Quite.
I mean, that's
absolutely.
very, very simple. Ian made a good point a little while ago. He said, well, what happened to her what happened to Sturgeon's promise that a vote for her wasn't a vote for independence, an independence referendum. And of course, we all know this, right? Yeah. She turns around, she took, as Anna Sarwar said, she took the thank yous from the pandemic, which were she shouldn't actually receive, but she got those thank yous and she turned them into this, vote for independence. The same way she co-opted people who voted to leave the UK, remain in the UK. She's co-opted their vote as well, and it's. And said, oh well, Scotland Scotland never voted for to leave the European Union. Well, 1 million Scots would disagree with that. So that's the thing there. We're going to come back in a second, and we're going to talk a little bit about the legal situation. This, as I told you, is a bit of a deep dive. You won't get this type of deep dive in any other podcast or show. This is what we're here for. We spend all day fighting on Twitter and learning and researching and doing all this type of stuff so that we can learn it and pass it on to you. We're not always correct, but we'd be pleased if you've got something to say, you want to pull us up, fine, on the comments. That's great. We're getting lots of comments in today. This has probably been the most popular show we've ever had as well. So thanks. Keep them rolling in.
Brilliant.
Just a second. Right. Okay. So, what's going on legally? So Sturgeon said that to preempt the UK, she's instructed Dorothy Bain, the Lord Advocate, to ask the Supreme Court about her referendum bill's legality. We've talked quite a few lawyers about this, and it's, that's not on, because the Supreme
Yeah.
Court is a place where you go for legal advice, right? It's a place where you go for judgments on stuff that you've already decided.
Right.
So it's most likely the Supreme Court will send this back and say, show us your actual legislation, because this is the process is supposed to be that the bill gets discussed in Parliament, gets the assent, gets discussed in Parliament. The presiding officer says that it's okay to go forward, and the Lord Advocate says it's legal. Right, that's the idea. But what we've had this kind of trickery. What we've got is some trickery going on, because the Lord Advocate has been able to push this up to the Supreme Court without having to say whether it's legal or not. In fact, the Lord Advocate is trying to get the Supreme Court to say whether it's legal or not without actually having a bill. I mean, they have a draft bill, but not a bill that's gone through Parliament, not being discussed in Parliament, hasn't got amendments, hasn't got anything like that on there. So it seems very strange, and numerous commentators have pointed this out, that the Supreme Court doesn't deal in hypotheticals.
That's
so
right.
you have to wonder, why was it done this way? Why do you think, David?
I think it was done this way because she's been told unequivocally, you take this to the Supreme Court, or if this is challenged, you're not going to win. Not a chance. So she's got the most tame Lord Advocate possible, somebody who's very much on side with her in her cabinet. And she's tried all this nonsense for the last 2 days about, oh, no, we can't possibly break the ministerial code by revealing the legal advice which we've been given. Absolute BS, all of it. Complete nonsense. Not even factually correct. There is nothing stopping the Lord Advocate coming into the chamber and discussing the decision she's made, as was made clear today. That's known. So they're simply telling untruths here. So you can only extrapolate what we know into thinking, okay, well, in that case, they know that the legality doesn't stack up here. They know they don't have a legal case to do this. So that's the only possible explanation as far as I'm concerned. Otherwise, I mean, why? If the legal advice had been, yes, you're onto an absolute winner here, they would be trumpeting it. And
of course, yes, we've said that for months. If they had a legal case, they would be up there. We talk to people all the time on Twitter, and we say, "What's your plan?
Yeah,
what's the plan?" And they go, "You'll see." We go, "You'll see" isn't a plan. We say, "Well, we've got legal advice." So if you had a plan, you had legal advice, you'd be trumpeting, as you say. Trumpeting is a good word. You're out there and saying, "This is amazing. We've got this great plan, and we're going to win. We've got popular support. We've got all this stuff." They have none of that. Not a single thing. However, the Supreme Court said that they would proceed with the case, but that's not really quite right. They would have a look at what the documents were that were sent to them. So I think that is quite different. I mean, it seems to me that this is really another way to kick the can down the road and avoid the hard stop, right? So they could waste many months. They could waste a couple of months on this. I don't know how the time scale is, but let's just say it's that a couple of months doing this thing before they even this thing where there's still a pretense that this draft bill could actually get some kind of Supreme Court, judgment saying, "Oh, it's okay." I mean, just the idea of it's ridiculous. It's like going to a court and saying, "Right, I want to break into this house over here." It's like they say, "Well, in that case, they might say, well, it is illegal, right?" But I mean, that's what the Supreme Court would say. You could say your draft is illegal, but they don't work that way. You don't go to the court for that type of thing. Everyone knows it's illegal. That's the thing. Okay.
Absolutely. And the Supreme Court is the ultimate arbiter. That's the whole point. You go there if you've exhausted every other legal avenue. You don't just go straight there because you think, that might be a nice thing to do and it might short circuit the process. Nonsense. You go there because they are the ultimate sayers of yes, you can or no, you can't. So no, they would not be taking this step. They wouldn't even be discussing this step or considering it unless they thought they had an extremely weak hand. And somebody said this today. Nicola Sturgeon is now playing a very, very weak hand, in as strong a way as possible. And okay, maybe she is. It's still a weak hand though, because she's still got like 7 high with 5 cards. So she's got absolutely nothing. So really, she's not going to win this, and she knows it. So I think that's becoming more and more obvious. And I think that's also why you keep hearing the SNP figures saying, oh, but we've got this mandate, we've got this cast iron mandate. This is a very, very recent development. And I think this is something that their focus groups or their whatever it is, their thinkers have actually brought up as an idea. Push this line about a mandate. Push this line about democracy.
Well, the idea, it's actually one of these political things where it's the opposite.
Yeah,
these are the opposite of what they say. They're pushing these ideas that to make the idea that plucky Nicola Sturgeon is standing up for the Scottish people against anti-democratic Westminster. And in fact, it's the opposite way around. Nicola Sturgeon is exceeding her powers, and as a devolved administrator, she is not entitled to ask for a referendum.
No.
She's maybe entitled to ask for one, but she knows the answer is no. If the answer is no, the answer is no, and she knows the answer is no.
Absolutely.
Anyway, right? It's only been 8 years since the last one. Even if that was an issue, things have changed in the world. It doesn't even matter if things have changed or not. The UK government has the right at any time to say no, because we've got the power. Right, and so all this talk of mandates and stuff is just is a smokescreen to keep our followers online, and I don't think it's a very good thing. Now we're going to go on to this next part here. Okay, so what she said was there is if this is amazing to me, this part, and actually it angers me because it's another abuse of power. But this is. We're going to put a clip on, and this is what she talks about as the next stage once the referendum plans are destroyed by the Supreme Court.
I hope we can resolve these things in a referendum. That is the proper way of doing it. But if all routes are blocked on that, then the general election will become the vehicle for people to express their view.
And to be clear, would it be a majority of seats or a majority of votes in that election that you would consider a mandate for independence?
Scotland can't become independent without a majority of people voting for it, which is a majority of votes have to be cast for independence before Scotland. That's a basic principle of democracy, and I'm the
lecture in democracy.
Like my counterpart
Here we go.
Westminster, who's trying to operate on the basis of principle, democracy and the rule.
Oh yeah, you're the principled one.
You to turn a general election in which people vote on all sorts of things into a single issue campaign.
With greatest respect, Glenn, I am not the one that is creating this situation. I want to have a
referendum. You're pushing for independence less than 8 years after you had a referendum and got an answer.
Well, lots of has changed in those 8 years, and remember, I was elected last year on a proposition for a referendum. There are a majority of MSPs in the Scottish Parliament supporting that, so the mandate is indisputable.
So there we had everything in that one thing. There we had the mandate, of course, which we've discussed, and this idea here. I know the thing that was quite interesting to me about this was when she starts, she says, well, the proper way is for a referendum, but if we can't get that, we'll do this other thing here. Basically, in addition to trying to run this referendum that she's not entitled to constitutionally, she says if she fails, she's going to make the next general election into a referendum. I mean, the arrogance of that.
Absolutely. It's just talk about getting ideas above your station. So you probably heard it this morning about Swinney, but we'll talk about this. The idea that she's saying there is, quite clearly, 50% plus one of the vote share, not the votes of the entire electorate, just the vote share. So unlike this 1979 Assembly election, they will declare independence, apparently. Now this, I think we've said that Wings Over Scotland had championed this as an idea, as a way to proceed in the past. So it's effectively, this is a unilateral declaration of independence.
Well, I don't understand why they're even doing the general election then.
Quite exactly.
I mean, that's the thing. Why don't they just declare it now? Because they've already got 44 out of 59.
48 out of 59.
Right, 48 out of 59 MPs in Westminster. Why don't you just do it now?
Absolutely.
Need a general election. So but people won't accept that because, number one, we had a free and fair referendum, right?
Yes.
And the result was settled. And it doesn't matter if people say, well, we didn't say once in a generation or whatever, once in a lifetime. They did say that, right?
They did.
So, and it was and the reason they said that was because to maximize their vote share. If this is a once in a lifetime opportunity, it's any basic sales, the once in a lifetime opportunity, then you've got to go out and do it. right?
Yep.
So they use that sales technique. They can't go back and then say, "Oh well, we actually didn't mean it," we'll get another go. But anyway, that aside, that the idea that they're going to just somehow, just say, "Oh well, we can declare independence." Well, then just go do it right now and
What are
see
you
what
waiting
happens.
for, guys? Exactly. What are you waiting for? So, of course, John Swinney nearly blew the whole game this morning when he was interviewed in Good Morning Scotland, and they said, "So what is it you're saying that if it's an election as a de facto referendum, will it just mean a majority of seats won will constitute the means for you to declare independence?" He said, "Yes, that's correct." And the guy said, stopped and paused and said, "Well, why haven't you done it already then? Because you won a majority of seats in 2017 and in 2019. He went off in some nonsense. And about half an hour after the interview finished, he was obviously phoned in desperation by the whips or by Sturgeon to say, no, that's not right. So Swinney then put on Twitter, "Oh, no, I didn't get that right. I misheard him. I didn't hear the whole question." Yeah,
Well,
right.
they can't even get the basics right. I mean, what kind of nonsense is that?
Yeah.
If they've got but I actually think that this thing, it shouldn't be. I mean, this is how can anyone agree to this idea that a general election will be a referendum? A
Absolutely.
general election is there are multiple issues and you choose between all of those. A referendum is a single issue and a single question. And
Right.
we talk about boycotting the PetendyRef. People, I think this is quite cynical because people can't boycott. People are very unlikely to boycott a general election. Right.
Quite.
Now, I would like to. If they say that this general election is going to be a referendum, I actually want to boycott that. But I can't do that because the purpose of the general election is to decide who forms the UK government. It's not to decide about Scottish separation, and it's another part of Sturgeon's power grab. She's subverting and perverting this democratic process here.
Yes.
By trying to put her opinion on what a general election should be. And I think that this really needs to be closed down. It really, really angers me. And I think it's so wrong, right? We have these elections and they're done for one reason. They're done so that we can vote in the government, not to be subverted like this. It's absolutely shocking. It's really vile. It's terrible. I'm going to drop in a clip actually of Professor James Mitchell, here's him saying about what he thinks about this idea.
There's no such thing as a de facto referendum. There are elections and there are referendums, and they're quite distinct. In an election, the voter is allowed to choose what she or he wishes to choose to determine their vote. It doesn't have to be about one issue. It rarely is about one issue. It's often about a range of issues. It's not for a political party to dictate the terms of an election. Now, in a referendum, the question is very clear, and that's the whole point of a referendum. It's focused. There isn't the same focus in an election. An election is simply not a referendum, a de facto referendum, or any other kind of referendum.
Well said, that man. It's too much for me almost. It's like,
absolutely,
it's bad enough that she's subverting the constitutional agreement that Scots have given her, right? And granted, said you can be ahead of this devolved administration, but there are rules, okay? But now she's trying to say, well, general election rules don't apply to us either.
Absolutely. That's just crazy. Getting really, really carried away with sense of her own importance. So, ludicrous. Really good to hear what the professor said there. And so, we know that the UK government aren't going to agree to any general election being treated as a referendum. And I'm sure that will come out in the coming weeks and months, that they will make that point clearly. Whoever it is going to be the government at the time. But it's the point is not just the UK government should reject this, but the Scottish people should also say, hang on a minute, nobody tells me that I have to vote in a general election for a single issue. It is not in your power to tell me that, because general election is to select and elect the government of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. It is not for Nicola Sturgeon to say, "Oh, we won, so we."
But I mean, even if they did win, this is the thing. I don't. Some people are saying, well, let's do that because we've got a majority and all this. I think we should absolutely not indulge this in any way. I think that any result, whether they win or whether they lose or whether we win, lose, or whatever it is, it's immaterial because it's not a referendum. Right? It's as simple as that. And the parties should not treat this. We talked a lot about Douglas Ross treating every election as a referendum. He did it in the last two. He said, it's not. They're not referendums, and that hopefully the point will have been hammered home to him by now. These are a referendum as a referendum, and treating any other election as a referendum is not. That's not what they're for.
Absolutely,
right? Local elections for local people, and it's not a referendum. And you see the people, nationalists on there going, well, Douglas Ross said this. And you're like, oh, for God's sake, that's, so Douglas, don't do that. And, but then, okay, so another question then is how would they enforce this nutty idea of theirs, right? So what are they going to do? They're going to win this thing. Let's say they get 51% of the vote. And then what are they going to say? Oh, yeah, we're going to close the border. What? I mean, how's it? It's not even remotely enforceable.
Absolutely right.
I think they're trying to say they might get the EU, maybe the EU and the UN involved, but they're not going to bother about it because all the UK government can say is, there was a proper election, a proper referendum a few years ago.
Exactly. Absolutely right. So they've got absolutely no avenue to explore down that path at all, none. So, and interestingly, we'll talk about this gentleman in a minute, but the Politics Live today, they had a discussion with Stewart Hosie. And Andrea Ledson was on, and she said to him, okay, so tell us about the, you want independence, okay, tell us about the currency you're going to use, and tell us about what will happen about a hard border between Scotland and England if you become independent. And his answer was, all of those questions were answered during the 2014 referendum campaign. No, they weren't. What was the answer about the currency? To this day, you've got the two main people in the SNP who are looking after currency discussions, Andrew Wilson and Tim Rideout, who are completely at loggerheads. Andrew Wilson thinks we'll maintain the pound and it will take at least 10 years until we have another currency. And Tim Rideout thinks we'll have a new currency within 3 months. So
nonsense. But I think we have to be very careful of saying indulging these discussions and saying Scotland can't exist in some way because of currency and all that. That is not the actual. That's indulging their obsession. The main parties, whether it's Labour, the Conservatives, the Lib Dems, they have to be saying, look, we're not going. This is not this general election is not a referendum by any means. It's not. We're going to talk about the issues that people actually matter to people, and not talk about currency borders, whatever like that. That's not what it's about, because all that does is just indulge them and keeps it going on and on.
I agree. In terms of how they approach the main parties approach the next election, they shouldn't even listen to any of this nonsense. They genuinely should ignore it. I agree. That's not to say that whenever the SNP figures are being asked, okay, what is it you think is going to happen? Oh, we're going to be independent. Really? We'll give us the details then. They haven't got answers, so it's quite a handy.
This is a distraction. This
sure, it is a distraction. You're right. So you're right. I mean, in general, I couldn't agree more. There's no way that the main UK parties should be in any way accepting of this nonsense that this could be in some way a de facto referendum, because a referendum is a referendum. It's a single issue on which a binary issue, you vote one way or the other. Right, okay, a general election is something entirely different, and Nicola Sturgeon does not get to say what the terms are or the battleground is when a general election is being fought. It simply is not in your gift, young lady. So please stop it.
No, because really, it's not that she's not that young. But some great comments coming in. We have been reading them, and we'd like to comment on them, but we're running out of time a little bit. There are two ways for Sturgeon to get a referendum.
Yeah. To
get a Section 30 order, or to get a majority of seats in UK Parliament.
Absolutely
Those
right.
are the rules. That's democracy. That's democracy, right? The people of Scotland chose that as their constitutional arrangement. That's democracy. Anything
Indeed.
else, any claims that she's got to democracy for exceeding her own powers are obviously false.
Absolutely, and this is a point I made today. People are starting to say now, SNP people are starting to say, so you're saying there is no legal path for us to get a referendum? There absolutely is a legal path. All you got to do is form a party which will win 326 or more seats in the UK Westminster elections. And when you do that, if their manifesto contains a pledge that you can break up the United Kingdom, I'll say you can have your referendum, or you can in fact go and break up the United Kingdom tomorrow. Yes. But when you've got a regional protest party, which is all the SNP is, let's be honest, it's a party which attracts votes as a generic impotent cry of rage against Westminster excess and Westminster privilege. That's all the SNP is. It's nothing more. Nothing more. They're not a serious party. If they were a serious party, they would have answered to all these questions instead of saying, don't ask me that. How have you even read what I said, as Nicola Sturgeon said today? Absolutely ridiculous.
Well, so I think what's this? John Scott says, I can't read that. It's time for a new party after anti-referendum party. I think that's exactly indulging them. So I don't do that. But we can discuss that more about that next time.
That's something in which Mark and I maybe have a slight disagreement, but we will talk about that in weeks to come.
With respect to any referendum, it's certainly a poor idea. There's a different matter.
In terms of general election as a referendum, for sure. Yeah, but this is the thing. We always say this. We do not play this in the nationalist parties' terms. So we don't describe ourselves as unionists, because we're not a union. We're a country. We don't live in a union. The union took place hundreds of years ago. The union was a joining together of two nations to form one country. So we're not in a union now. We're in a country now. That's the whole point. Like the United States is a country. It's not a union. It's a country. Germany's not a union. It's a country. France isn't a union. It's a country. Etc. Etc. Etc.
Well, Rita, how about starting to abolish Holyrood? Well, perhaps it might come to that. We will see how things go on. Let's remember, the tail doesn't wag the dog.
Here.
As the expression goes, and we're a bit tired of that happening. The very best way to stay up to date with the podcast is go to our YouTube channel, just search for the podcast on Google and rattle the subscribe button. And now it's the biggest moment of the week.
Yes.
It is Zoomer of the week.
Go.
Right, David, you're up. First
up. Okay, my nomination this week for Zoomer of the Week is SNP Member of Parliament Stewart Hosie. Now, Hosie appeared on Politics Live today with Joe Coburn, a terrific show. Watch it if you don't already, it's great. Anyway, he appeared on this show today along with Conservative MP Andrew Leadsom. I mentioned this earlier. And during the discussion, the host, Joe Coburn, asked Miss Leadsom if she understood the SNP's desire for sovereignty. She asked her on the basis of Leadsom being a Brexiteer. And Miss Leadsom said, of course I understand the desire for sovereignty. The United Kingdom is a sovereign nation with 4 devolved parts. Stewart Hosie sat and scowled and said, no, it's not. It's a state. So Stewart Hosie, who is an SNP Member of Parliament, a man who has successfully stood for election to the Westminster Parliament and where he resides to this day, believes that the UK is not a country. He thinks it's a state, whatever a state is. So can I suggest, if Stewart Hosie thinks that the United Kingdom is not a country, he immediately advises the United Nations, NATO, and G7, because they're pretty convinced that the UK is a country. So let me just leave you with that thought. My nomination for Zoomer of the Week is Stewart Hosie.
Yes, well, and there's so much confusion goes on about whether, the UK is a country or not. I mean, there's just so much denial. It's just denial. It's a unitary state. As you said, it's not a union. It's the result of a union.
Quite.
And, I always say, say that the SNP is like a leg that wants to cut itself off from the body to see if it can run faster. And that's the kind of nonsense level it is, really.
For sure.
Okay, next up we have... Oh, yeah, my nomination.
Your nomination, indeed.
Well, yeah, so wait a minute, do the thing. Look, it has to be. It has to be this woman, this flag-waving woman, Evelyn Tweed, who decided to go on one of those all under one brain cell marches, and of course they said of like 500,000 people there, and It was,
Yeah.
in fact, there were only 432. Here she is here. She apologises for holding ultra-nationalist flag as party gives bizarre wind explanation. Actually, well, there she is. There, she's holding this flag. It belongs to this group, which is called, I can never get the name right here. Where are we going here? Siona Gale, Gaelic or something like that. Sorry for Gaelic. There are some people who do read Gaelic and watch and do have Gaelic stuff.
Absolutely.
Watches. So please excuse us for murdering that. We are not anti-Gaelic people at all in any way. However, we are anti-ethnic nationalists, like people who are holding up this flag. This is a group that actually was involved in violence before, and I think they want English people removed from Scotland. And she says she represents Stirling, and they had this meet up at the site of the Battle of Bannockburn.
Yep.
And they were like a bunch of, I mean, look at this guy here. There's a guy here. You can see the capes, and there's a bunch of people, with their Robert the Bruces there and all this type of stuff here. So anyway, she had to apologise. Just to be clear, I do not support any form of ultranationalism. They hate that. As soon as they get picked up on their nationalism, like, oh, I'm not a nationalist. He's like, oh, and you're a British nationalist. It's like, well, if you don't like nationalism, why are you always talking about it? And you are nationalist. Your prime objective is to free, as it were, the nation of Scotland. And you're a nationalist, whether you're ultra or not is a matter of thing. But waving a flag, it's like, yes, I was walking along and this flag just came into my hands and I waved it around, not knowing that it was, basically the same as a swastika. It's like, yeah, of course she knew what she was doing, smiling away there.
Indeed, she knew, and so much so that when anyone questioned her on it afterwards, including me, I remember saying to her, I understand your excuse here that you didn't realise that it was a harmful flag, but why are you blocking everybody who's asking you for it? Don't you realise you're just exhibiting very guilty behaviour by doing it? And her reply to that was to block me. So
I've just actually read what it says in the rest of the article. This SNP spokesman claimed MSP was forced to hold the flag when the wind kept flapping in her face. They said just before the photo was about to be taken, a man with a flag jumped into the front of the picture. Because of the wind, the flag kept flapping in front of Evelyn's face, so she held it to prevent it from doing so.
Well, obviously, naturally, yeah. Well, that's totally believable, relatable story there. Fantastic, guys. Yeah, what?
Okay, so it's up for you to decide, David. Why not?
Right, as you know, I'm always too polite to choose my own guest.
You would choose if it was good enough.
If it was good at it. No, I always pick somebody who's a little bit weak and just have a little stab at them. But no, I'm going to give it to Evelyn Tweed because of her obvious inability to accept the fact that she did wrong, and also for the impertinence she showed in blocking many other people, including me. So you win, Ms. Tweed. You for holding up a fascist party's flag. You are Zoomer of the Week.
Yes. Okay. Next up. Okay. Very good. So we are going to wrap up now. Remember, we will be off the air for 2 weeks. Sad not to be on, but foreign lands beckon. So we will be back on July the 20th at our usual time of 7 p.m. We'd like to give a huge thank you to our donors, and we are raising funds right now. People have been donating even as this podcast has been running. So please do whatever you can afford. There's quite a long way to go. We're at 4,700 or something. We need to get to 7,000. So we can get there. Anyway, so please do go to our website, click the donate button. We'll get there. If you can't do that, send us a note, whatever. Thanks to UK Union Voice and United Against Separation, the other pages that support us. If you can do two things, please find the Majority Podcast and subscribe. That would be really great. And any sharing you can do and talking to people is very good.
Absolutely.
I think we've already mentioned the donate bit, so you don't need to do that.
I think so, indeed. Yeah. Quite a lot of really nice comments here. Niall, somebody was asking, where's Niall? Niall is off at a protest tonight. He's speaking at a protest tonight. That's the only reason he's not here. He'll be back next time. Don't worry. He hasn't left. That's
it. So I'll leave you with the thought of the week. Please, I see this all the time. A message to people in England who are so tired of Sturgeon's moaning that they want to get rid of Scotland. You just let them go. You know, it's like, come on, instead of giving Sturgeon and a band of toxic nationalists exactly what they want,
Absolutely.
and giving them the breakup of the UK, social, economic, and territorial, the whole fabric of the UK, letting them break that up, we would appreciate. The majority of us here in Scotland who are trying to fight against her would really appreciate your support.
Here, here. Couldn't
So
agree
please
more.
stay strong, everyone. We will defeat her and her arrogant brand of toxic nationalism. Oh, yes. Also, I should say, we have to mention that. But we did do 2 weeks. And here, I'm going to put, here's Mary to say hello. How are the comments tonight, Mary?
Hey, Mary.
Goodness, good evening, everyone. Great to see you tonight. The comments have been absolutely on fire. My little mouse has got smoke coming out of it. Yeah, thanks, everyone. It's been great.
All right, so we hope you feel a bit better as well. We've forced you
Yes,
to do the comments and chat while you're just still recovering from being sick. Thank you all for watching. We will see you again in 2 weeks. It has been our pleasure to be with you tonight, and we hope to see you. Take care. Bye.
Good night, guys.
Good
Thanks
night.
very
Good
much,
night. Thank you for all your
Bye.
comments.
Bye-bye.